now we're at the Memorial Arch on the other side of Valley Forge Park that was established in 1910. Originally, there was going to be two arches at this part of the park, and then on the other side. This is a model of the Arc de Triomphe in Rome that was established by the Roman Empire in 81 AD. If there are two openings in the arch, it represents either officers and emperors, or all officers or all emperors. And so this arch has one arch that signifies it's a memorial of Washington in the Army. And it's 60 feet high. And the reason the arch is here is because in front of me, coming up this Upper Gulf Road, is where Washington's army came into Valley Forge. And at this point, you can see the high ground, and as I'm walking towards, that's the cabin line. So when Washington came in here, his army came in behind me up on the Upper Gulf Road to this high point, and then Washington distributed the army that way towards Muhlenberg line, that way towards the Pennsylvania line, and then he established the inner line and then went down over the second valley to where we were at the headquarters. So the arch was designed by Congress, and there was supposed to be the Washington Arch and the von Steuben Arch. The Washington Arch was supposed to go down by Washington's headquarters. The other arch was supposed to go out to where the modern day visitor center is. But believe it or not, Congress said it cost too much money. They were $50,000 each. I can't understand, but Congress does not change. So Congress voted on both arches. The House passed it. The Senate voted it down. So 6 months later, they came back, and I still don't understand this. They're going to build one arch for $100,000 rather than two arches for $50,000 each. So Congress really doesn't change from time period to time period. So it was started in 1914, and it was dedicated by 1917. And it's dedicated to General Washington and the Army here. Before 9/11, you could drive around the arch on your automobile, and that's why it's cobblestone, and then you could park behind it. Now, since 9/11, they put up the barriers where you can only walk up here, or you can ride your bicycle up here and come to the arch. This is gorgeous at night. It is lit up. All the generals that were here are listed on the inside, and we'll go over to that. And then on the back side of the arch is the phrase that General Washington wrote to General Clinton about the troops here, that they were naked and starving, and yet the incomparable soldiery that he had here. He was begging for troops, he was begging for supplies, and he wrote that to General Clinton, the Governor Clinton of New York, and that's what's on the other side of the arch on the outside. So this is where Washington came in. This is the one arch, and you can see this arch from all over the park that we go through. And this part of it was dedicated by the Masons. Washington was a Mason. So part of this monument and arch money was donated, or the cobblestone was donated by the Masons, because General Washington, President Washington, was a lifelong member of the Masons. As we go inside, you can see on either side the names of the generals and the officers that were here. All the major officers of the Revolution was here. Benedict Arnold finally gets here, and he's given another commission by General Washington, and then becomes the military governor of Philadelphia. So you can see the commander-in-chief, the major generals, Johann Cobb, General Greene, the Marquis de Lafayette, Charles Lee, General Mifflin, von Steuben, General William Sterling, Sullivan, who built the bridge, and then the brigadier generals underneath of them. And you can see some of those men are not Americans. They came here to help the American Army fight the revolution. So this is just phenomenal inside of this thing. and it just tells a whole story. And so much of this is in the design of 81 AD. This was designed by a man named Paul Philippe Cret. I believe I'm pronouncing his last name right. It's C-R-E-T. He was an architect. He was a professor at the University of Penn for 30 years. He built and composed many of the bridges in the area, many of the museums in Philadelphia, and if you've ever been out to Gettysburg, to the Eternal Light Monument out there on Oak Hill, he created that monument for the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. He is not born Philadelphian, he was born in France, but he lived most of his life here, and he was the architect for this monument. He is overlooked during the 1930s and 1940s in America because many of the German architects stole a lot of his patterns to create monuments and architectural for Nazi Germany. So he was not a Nazi and he wasn't German, but because they took so much of what he designed, he is oftentimes overlooked in American history because of Nazi Germany. But he created this, and it's just a phenomenal arch, and it looks a lot higher than it is. It's 60 feet high. But you can see this arch, particularly when it's winter, when there's no leaves on the trees, from all over the park. And at night, with the magnificent lights, you can see this lit up. And again, it represents, it's dedicated to General Washington and the army that was here, and Washington's characteristics of the army, that even though they were naked and starved, their character here to be able to continue for the cause of freedom is remained and remembered because of this arch.